So, guess what we're talking about today, John?
What are we talking about, Dean?
Nominally, according to the title, we're talking about how finding the right copywriter is too hard. But that's not actually what we're talking about. I'm just going to use copywriters as an example. What we're really talking about is how there are certain markets, certain professions where you, as a project leader, a manager, head of a department or group or company or small business owner, you're looking to hire someone who does X. And in some markets, some labor markets, and I don't mean the general market of your whole country, but in certain markets, certain like niches and professions, that's a lot easier to do than in others. And in some, like copywriters, a lot of positions in marketing, especially sort of like social media marketing, and I guess copywriting would be considered one of those marketing ones, video and so on. It's very hard to find someone who's good and not just someone who can kind of seem like they're good if you don't look too hard. So let's talk about copywriters and why it can be very hard to find, and a certain kind of copywriter. And then you'll see that the lessons apply to other professions, especially where a lot of freelancers exist. Okay.
Sounds good.
One thing about copywriting is that it's very easy to get into copywriting. In fact, it's one of the cheapest professions to get into. You literally just need any kind of computer and an internet connection, because your tool is essentially just any word processor. I mean, you don't even have to buy a word processor. You can just use Google Docs for free. A lot of people use Google Docs. So it costs nothing to get started. And there are a lot of people, obviously far fewer, but a lot of people who are selling the promise of riches, that copywriting is an easy career. It's easy to get into. It's easy to make six figures. It's easy to like leave your cubicle job and become a freelance copywriter. And there's a never ending supply of customers who are lined up, yelling at you, take my money. And so people are attracted. I was going to say seduced, but I don't want to say seduced. Attracted to.
Although it's probably accurate.
It's closer to the truth. So they're sort of attracted to come into this marketplace. And if you imagine everyone, we've done this many times, right? Showed it as sort of a pyramid with 3 layers. The bottom layer is almost the entire pyramid, because a lot of people rush in and they do it as a side business, not a full-time business. They're sort of, they should not be in that business, but they were seduced into it. They bought some courses, so they call themselves X or Y and this sort of it. So, and there are lots of professions like that around marketing, especially around marketing and other things. I mean, you think about it, how hard is it to get into the lawn mowing business? Right? If you can
Just
get
got a
the
man
equipment,
mower.
that's about it.
In fact,
Right?
I know
Start
somebody that
walking door to
just got
door.
into the lawn mowing business.
Which is why there's a lot of people in the lawn mowing business, and most of them financially would be better off with a job instead of being out on their own.
I think that's true with a lot of entrepreneurial activities.
Right. And then the second reason why it can be very hard to find a copywriter, a social media marketer, blah, 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 is because they never get a chance to professionalize. They're constantly hustling for the next dollar. And by dollar, I'm not far off. It could be just hundreds of dollars or $1,000 or something. And so when you're in that mode, especially when you're just starting out, you're always in that mode, whether you're using Fiverr or Upwork or you're doing your own marketing to find your own clients or whatever, you never get a chance to take a breath. You definitely never get a chance to step back a little bit and forecast what your revenue is going to be. You never get a chance to, what's the word I'm looking for here? Invest, either in yourself, your business, systems, better tools, and so on, because you literally don't know where your next, you might know where the next meal's coming from, but you don't know where next Monday's meal's coming from. And next Monday is never that far away. So because they're in this constant hustle for small projects, next client kind of thing, they never get a chance to professionalize. And if you don't professionalize, you can never charge more, which then gives you breathing room, and all kinds of things, all kinds of good things happen once you're able to charge more.
Definitely.
right? Is this any of this resonating with you and what you see with competitors in your industry?
Totally.
Yeah, why?
Well, I see that from the copywriting front. I see it on the social media front, especially, which is two
Mhm.
areas that I work in. I also see it in the video front. There's so many people that are um, hustling to get started, and a lot of times it's all painted as
Right,
an easy career path. And not to say that you can't do pretty well at it, but it's kind of a rarity to do super, super well at it
right.
for the most part.
Yeah,
But that's true with anything.
yeah. I mean, the minimum amount of revenue you need to sort of be in business is $5,000, $6,000 a year. Right? You need at least that much to just take care of taxes, pay for the services every business needs,
At
even the
least.
versions of them, and so like it, it's a hobby until you get to five or $10,000 a year.
Mhm,
Most people in copywriting struggle to make it very far beyond $10,000 a year. If they make $30,000 a year, they comfortably fit in the largest single group of all copywriters. And then the next, the sort of the final reason of the three is that most of the jobs for these folks who make up like nearly all of the pyramid, level one is almost the entire pyramid, is that they they because they don't have a chance to professionalize and charge higher rates and breathe and plan and
mhm.
forecast and invest, they can't they never get to the larger sort of corporate clients or longer term clients where they can work for far fewer companies per year and either work for far fewer companies and make the same money if they're happy with the money they're making, or work for far fewer companies and make even more money. So they're
Mhm.
stuck working for people who want the absolute lowest price and want to pay, why would I pay $105 for whatever X? I'm just making up the numbers when I can, find someone who only charges $100. And so because they can't professionalize, because there are so many people constantly entering their marketplace, new people, and because they never get a chance to like step back and plan out, they're stuck in this cycle of always they're stuck in a cycle of only having clients where price is the number one determinant.
Or as you would say, find that halo niche that you
They
can
never
start,
get to even they might even get to a niche, but they don't get to a halo niche,
or they
right?
don't try to get to a niche because they don't know what a niche is.
Yeah, because they're junior and probably shouldn't be in this
Yeah.
business anyway. Now, here's the thing. The topic of today's discussion is why is it hard to why, it's hard to find the right copywriter for you. And these are the main reasons. You have to wade through so many people. It's such a tightly packed crowd and you
Mhm.
don't know exactly like how to phrase what you're looking for or recognize what you're looking for. I imagine there are a lot of people who have hired a copywriter to do something and were very dissatisfied with the result, the process of finding them or the
Yeah.
result that they got out of it. And those three reasons are the reasons.
I would definitely imagine that that's the case.
Yeah. What do you see in the social marketing part around always people having to always hustle for the next small project, next small client?
It's basically the same thing. It's a form of content creation, so it's really just like copywriting.
Right.
So a lot of the same
It's
things
fighting
that you
words, but
see
go ahead.
there. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the same things you see there, we see here.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've been on, in a way, both sides of this. Like, what would you advise people who are looking for a quality person for social media marketing, video production, copywriting? Like, what's the advice from someone who's, moved out of the lower part of the pyramid and is into the
Yeah.
upper part of the pyramid? Like, what would you advise a client that you've never met who's looking to hire someone in a field like this? Maybe not even yours, but a field like it.
That's a really good question. Typically, what I would do is,
Well, let's start this way. What would you advise them to not do?
what would you well, not just go out and hire somebody willy-nilly. I mean, you really do want to go and try to get some referrals from people who they've hired. If you're going through like an Upwork or a Fiverr, you want to look at reviews. You want to try to get some samples of their work. Um, those are, kind of the classic things that you want to do.
Right. Now, see, I'm
What
not
else would you
sure.
say?
It's an almost intractable problem
Hmm.
for someone on the other side, on the client side, looking for the right person. Let me give you some examples. Reviews and testimonials for certain professions are often written by the person that's being reviewed. In
Hmm.
fact, this is something I
Very
advise
true.
everyone, right? If someone writes a review or a testimonial for you, writing testimonials and reviews is usually not something that most people ever do very often or ever become good at accidentally, and it's not worth becoming good at professionally. And so if you're someone who can write convincingly, then you absolutely should be writing the testimonial and then giving it to someone and say, "Hey, thanks for agreeing to provide, a quote or a testimonial or a review for me. Is this one okay? Feel free to, change anything or write your own. But if you don't mind, this one's fine. I don't mind it." And you just wrote it for him. You gave it to him.
Yeah, especially if
So
it's something that they've already said already. I do that
yeah,
a lot with people where they'll come and they've said, John was extraordinary with it. He helped me figure out my way and navigate through this and this and this. And I'll write it out for them. And they're like, yeah, it's exactly what I said. Why wouldn't I use that? That
yeah.
sounds
Why
great.
would
Thanks for
people
helping
will
me
take
out.
the easy route?
Right.
It's not like writing a review or a testimonial is fun for most people.
Hmm.
So if something's already there and someone else already put it together and you don't disagree with it, then, sure. Copy,
Hmm.
paste, hit send. There, it's been uploaded. Done.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes people will write me something totally out of character that I would
Yeah.
never be able to even do myself. Like, for instance, we did a strategic video master's class, and we had a woman who was in it, and unbeknownst to us, she was very involved with with the Canadian government with financial education for Canadian citizens, especially the underprivileged, excuse me. And so she wrote me a testimonial that was just unbelievable. I mean, she literally said that we went into this meeting in Canada and we told
Right.
the powers that be that they should be doing more short videos on TikTok and Instagram to get leverage. And I wouldn't have thought of
Yeah.
that. So, but we were able to smooth it out a little bit too and make it sound, even better based on some of the other stuff that she said.
Right.
So you just never know what you're going to get.
Right. Well, let's see. What can we put together for people to help them hire? I would put less emphasis on reviews and the number of reviews. I would put more emphasis on examples
Yes,
and like a portfolio of work that people can provide. Now, you don't know that it hasn't been faked,
you don't know. You don't know. And most of
but
my best stuff from the writers and folks that I've hired have come from referrals. So
right.
I'm always asking, hey, I need such and such written. Who
Yeah.
would you use? And
Yeah. I
that's
mean, I
where
would
I
literally reach out to my own network.
yeah,
I would say, "Hey, has
first
anyone
and
hired
foremost.
someone in this role? What did you think of them? And would you like pass me along?"
Yeah,
That's probably the most reliable way. And then,
totally.
what do you do during the initial meeting? Right? You haven't hired them yet. You're sort of vetting them. You're talking to probably multiple marketers, video people,
Hmm.
social media people, copywriters, whatever. Like, what are you looking for? What are you asking for? They should be asking you most of the questions,
Yeah.
and they should have really, really good answers, something that really resonates with you for
Hmm.
anything that you ask them.
Hmm.
Now that sounds pretty like, well, of course, Dean, like that would always be the case no matter what I was doing. If even hiring a lawyer, they should be doing that, right?
They
Whatever.
should be. I've hired
Right.
some good attorneys too.
Right. But the thing about marketers, and these are all kind of sort of marketing positions in a way, right? They should be their approach. There are so many ways to approach things in marketing. Their approach should really resonate with a positive future that you see yourself in,
Yes.
because it's very easy for them to go off in another direction. And the way a lot of copywriters work, especially people who are doing things like changing web pages, and or rewriting stuff that's already been created, but it's time to get it to the next level and thing.
Mm.
It's very common for them to sort of ask a few questions, take you through a bit of a questionnaire, uh, say that they've got a process, and then you just give them the stuff. They go away, and then they come back, and then it becomes this sort of volleyball of back and forth over the net.
Hmm.
What about this? What about that? I don't like this. Oh, I've got to read this whole thing again, and it's changed again, but I don't like this part. Blah blah blah, and off you go. And it can be time consuming on the client side.
You
So
know,
go ahead.
well, I was going to say you brought up something interesting when you said about hiring attorneys. So I had to hire an attorney not that long ago, and a friend of mine, of course, said, "Yeah, I know you had some difficulty with the first attorney you hired. There's a group called AVO
Right.
that is a group that is centered around attorneys, and you can probably go in there and find somebody that specializes in that area of expertise that would be great for you." And I did that, and it worked amazingly. Now, taking that lesson, I've also applied to that to a lot of other areas that I work in. So, in other words, I know the copywriting groups, I know the social media groups. It's very easy to kind of go in and ask people who they know about such and such, and if they've written anything like what I'm looking to have done, or the same kinds of things. I can make that same application from that field to
Yeah.
this field, and it worked great. So I did learn a lesson from hiring an attorney once.
Yeah. People congregate,
They do, and there's
and
groups
maybe you
around
need
there.
to go sniff out where they congregate. I don't think I
Yeah.
belong to. I belong to one, but it's built into something else that I paid for.
Mm,
For instance, I don't really belong or spend any time at all, like 0 hours per year,
mhm,
in like copywriting groups on Facebook or that kind of stuff for basically the same reason,
mm,
that it's just full of well-intentioned, I don't want to take away from anybody, but well-intentioned but very junior people who keep asking for, can someone critique my work? Can someone tell
yeah,
me what they think about it? And it's like, no, dude. Like, do you have any idea how time consuming it is to have 1,000 people a month asking to have their work? Because I'm instantly the senior person or one of
mhm.
the senior people in any of these groups. And there's
No,
not much upside for me. I did
yeah,
I have to confess something. So on, I think
go
Thursday or Friday, after we did our thing on Thursday,
Mhm,
our last video, someone posted and say, "Hey, like, I've put together my about page for my as a copywriter for my, sort of talking about, who I am and that kind of stuff." And and I don't know why, but I clicked on it and looked at it. And it's sort of like a discussion group kind of thing. You get notifications by email certain sometimes, but it's an online discussion group. And I looked at this page from this person, and I wrote like a question to her in the thread, and then I went back and deleted it
mm,
because I didn't even want to like get involved. But and I thought it could be construed as mean. But basically, it was one sentence that said, "How much do you love that opening line?" Because that was not a good opening line. So clearly, she wasn't like rewriting or doing the latest iteration of her page. This was probably like her first page.
mm,
And I do have 4 people around the world
mhm,
where none of them live in the United States, and one's in Canada, but she's not from Canada. And I help them every week or every few weeks. I have like office hours, and they'll come in and they'll talk about projects that they're working on and show me examples of web pages or ebooks or email sequences that they're trying to put together, and I'll help them rewrite it and point out what they should and shouldn't be doing and that kind of. And I don't charge for any of that.
mhm,
I can't do it for more than a handful of people; it would be too time consuming. But I mean, clearly, when you're junior, you have a lot to learn, and you need the hardest part. This is probably true for a lot of people that are junior. Either what they produce is very formulaic, right? They have to hug the guardrails because they don't know how to drive on the road.
mhm,
So it's very formulaic, and what and the problem with formulaic is not only is it boring to the audience, but it's what everyone else at your level is doing.
mhm.
So you can't charge more, not for long, before you're found
Right,
out.
right.
So it's either that, and it's kind of formulaic, or they just can't get out of their own way, And so everything they write sounds like everything that they write. And if you can't get out of your own way, there's the client's audience, a listener, a reader, a viewer, whatever. There's the client's audience. There's the client who wants, communication. And then there's you slightly behind and to the side so you can see the that I wasn't even looking at frame. Yeah, okay. It looks like I was my hands. For a second, my hands were not even like. So they can't get out of their own way,
Yeah.
and they can't get their ego out of the process, which means they never sound like the client.
Right. And
So
that's one
they
of the
either
most
sound like
important
nothing
things.
at all, or they sound like themselves.
Right.
Neither of which is acceptable to the client. If you sound like yourself, or you sound like really nothing, just the back of a cereal box is more interesting because it's
Mm.
too formulaic, then the client does not consider that a good outcome. They don't consider your stuff like worth paying for or
And
worth the
most clients are hiring you because they want you to write in their voice in some way,
yeah,
shape, or
they
form.
want you to take all of the stuff
Yeah.
that's jumbled up in their head that they wish they could communicate. And at the
And
same time, that's like level
yeah.
2, right? So level 1 is what I just described. Level 2 is you take what the client wants to say and has said, and all that jumbled up stuff that they can't reduce down and,
Mhm.
and concentrate into a powerful message. That's like level 2. And then level 3, if you ever get up there, is knowing or understanding what that audience, that proposed audience of viewers or readers or listeners, actually what will move them, right? What will shift them off the X and into the Y so
Mhm.
that they'll actually like push a button, subscribe to something, book a call with sales, make a purchase, whatever, right? And virtually everybody is trying to do the first thing. A small number of people are doing the second thing, where at least they're getting the voice and the tone and the threading the needles of all the jumbled up thoughts and things the client wants to say into
Mhm.
something focused. And then like a very small number on the third level, where they don't even they consider what they would ever want to say completely irrelevant. Like I don't consider what I want to say to anyone's audience relevant ever. And then, but I also, to a large degree, when we get there, can discount. This is going to sound rude, right? Or who is this jerk? Discount what the client wants to say to that customer,
Mhm.
because it's really what the customer wants to hear from this client that matters. And
Right.
no matter how much you want to say to them and how much you want them to hear it, if they're not interested and are never going to be, and you don't, then what's the point? Why did you pay me? There's no point because no one's paying attention. If the audience isn't paying attention, why are you doing all this work and paying for anybody? It doesn't make any sense. You just kind of have to get something out there. So you got something out there and you paid somebody.
Yep.
But really, it's what resonates with that audience. What makes them like perk up and say, oh, this might be for me. It's like people like me do business with people like that as a reader, as an audience. People like me do things like this. People like us believe stuff and it's the same stuff. That's what you're aiming for. You don't, you don't find those people usually on Fiverr. And I have nothing against Fiverr or Upwork. If you're a junior, that's a great place to start.
Not typically, although you'd be surprised. I've found some very, very good guys on
Like
Fiverr,
any group that's large enough,
but you
you
just
will
never know.
find people who are very, very good.
There are some
For
gems in the
them,
rough.
that platform works. For them, giving up 20%, 20 cents off of every dollar that the client pays,
Yeah.
giving it to Upwork makes sense. I actually
Yeah.
don't know what Fiverr costs, but I imagine it's similar.
I would think it's fairly similar.
Yeah. So just for anybody who's using an intermediary platform like that, just understand that if you're paying $100, the person who's working for you is only getting 80.
Mhm.
So really, that person is what that person is the equivalent of what an $80 a person, $80 an hour. Let's say it's 1 hour, as $100 an hour. That's like, just keep the math simple. It's a lot of money, but let's keep the math simple,
Right.
right? You could hire an $80 person, and that's what you're getting. You're getting an $80 person, not a $100 person. You're paying 100, but you're getting an $80 person.
Mhm.
And again, nothing against those platforms. They definitely serve a need,
Right.
right? And people who are brand new have to start somewhere.
And it
But Giving up 20% of your income is a lot.
It is a lot.
You're always hustling for the next one. I mean, it's anyone who's ever tried to use Upwork or Fiverr, you post a project and within a day, hundreds of people have like applied to be the person you're ultimately going to hire.
I think the other thing too, when you get into stuff like that, is people can't gauge what they spend on their own marketing
Yeah.
because they don't keep track.
Yeah.
So they either don't keep track, they don't care, or some other reason. But so that plays into the picture of that too.
Okay. So it's been 25 minutes. Let's recap real quick.
Okay.
If you're on the hiring side, going to your own network and asking around, have you ever worked with someone who does X? Can you send it? Still in 2022, still the best way, especially when you've got a very thick end of the lower end market for whatever profession you're looking for. So,
Definitely.
second, there are some places where those folks congregate. If you're willing to put in the time to sort of
Hmm.
join and lurk, they're not all going to be as organized as a bunch of lawyers would be. But, and especially remember, there aren't a lot of really, really cheap lawyers. And there aren't a whole bunch of lawyers coming into the profession all the time who are willing to undercut everybody by like a dollar or even a cent, and driving down
Right.
a race to the bottom, right?
Yep.
So some professions would be a little different. Accountants would be a little different, for instance, but even paralegals would
A
be
little
different.
different.
But for a lot of marketing jobs, you don't actually need any official training or licensing, and
Hmm.
so you end up with a lot of people there. So if you're willing to sort of hang out and lurk and read, a Facebook group full of copywriters, then over time you will eventually know if they're in that group. I don't know why they would be, but if you're in that group, you will find out like the best people and you can approach them directly.
Very true. I know some
And
awesome
similarly,
people.
you can approach people on without ever posting anything, without ever posting the job. You can approach people on Fiverr or
Mhm.
Upwork directly and say, "Hey, you seem to be someone who's doing an awful lot of this. Like, would you be interested in working privately with me?" Understand it's against terms of service and their legal obligation to a company like Upwork to
Right.
get off the platform
Hmm.
and do the business there without giving Upwork its cut.
Yes.
They may not be willing, but if you're willing to stay within that framework, understanding that they're losing 20% off the top of whatever you pay to give back sort of a double tithe to the platform that they're on, and the platform provides a service that they couldn't otherwise provide themselves, so you do have to pay for that.
Hmm.
Then that's what you get.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, I can't tell you the number of people who constantly say to me, "John, I just want to do what I do best, and marketing in it."
Right.
And that's the place for those people,
Yes.
or a place for those people, I
Right.
should say.
And some people, either for personality reasons or just time reasons, it makes sense for them to be on a platform and give up $1 out of every five in
Sure.
order to not have to do X, Y, and Z and be whatever. So, I mean, nothing against those platforms, like I said, but like the very best people, copywriting also, I don't know if this works for you
Mm.
and the industries you're in. Copywriting is a little different in that at some point, unless you just really like taking on new challenges and stuff, it's actually more profitable to ultimately become one of the people who creates courses and stuff that
Yes.
tries to induce non-copywriters to become copywriters with the promise of riches, and like you perpetuate the circle all over.
Or at least improve their copywriting without the perpetuation of riches, because I've
Yeah,
seen that too.
yeah.
Seen an awful
Although
lot of
that's a
people who
lot
just
less
say,
common than people
you
saying
know,
you should be making $600,000 a year and not even working
yeah.
anymore.
But it's a funny world right now where we all have to be sort of adept at copywriting. We may not be perfect. I'm not you, but at the same time,
Sometimes I wonder if I'm me.
I know, me too. But anyways,
I dated I can't believe I wrote that crap. I gotta go
but
back and
but
redo that.
it's become one of those worlds where we have to write a little ad copy here and
Yeah,
there. We have
everyone
to
writes
write.
more and reads more than ever before.
We do. And so there's no real avoiding it. And I think there's a place for the
Yeah,
copywriter who creates classes to just help the average guy be a little bit better at writing their own stuff
yeah.
so they can hire a little less out. It's kind of like
Fancy like copywriting for business owners.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of like the web designer syndrome way back. You get lined up with a web designer, and then everything that you own is held hostage.
Yeah.
You don't know how to handle your own server. You don't have,
Right.
it's really the same kind of thing. It's just a different arena, different metaphor.
Different metaphor, and still kind of ridiculous that here we are in 2022 and we still rely on our own personal networks to refer people.
Yep.
That might never, I mean, I've reached the point where I think that might never ever change.
I don't think that will ever end.
Mm.
But I will say though, we've got things now like Lunch Club and places like that
Yeah.
where we can meet new people,
Yeah.
and develop better relationships with people we need
Yeah.
to improve our business.
So we're getting there
Yeah,
slowly.
slowly but surely.
Yeah. All right. That's it for today. Bye, everyone.